What's going on, everybody? JT here, and I have a wonderful conversation. We have two great guests from Goracle. Goracle is a decentralized Oracle network on the Algorand blockchain, and joining us today is Abdul Osman and Samantha Palmer.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're glad to be back on.
Yeah, of course. And for those tuning in just now, and for those that have new to the show, new to Algorand, we've spoken before with Abdul on the show, maybe at the beginning of this year. So I'll include a link in the description down below to that interview in case you want to learn more about Goracle. But happy to learn what's new, honestly. So Goracle, I believe, is right around the corner. So how about we just start off with what Goracle is, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So I'll kick us off here. Goracle is basically a decentralized blockchain oracle. The goal is to be able to get any kind of off-chain data and bring it on-chain and do it in a decentralized manner. That's a short answer. Right? We can get a lot deeper into the mechanisms of it for sure.
So yeah, Oracle services are really, really interesting, and we're definitely going to dive a bit deeper because that certainly was a brief description of what Goracle is. Could you just illuminate us on the types of services that Oracles allow for, and how will Oracle services essentially change the Algorand landscape? I suppose is the question.
Yeah, so you think about when you're trying to build on-chain applications that use external state, whether it's a sports-based application or a decentralized financial application that needs, real-world assets. You can't really do that on chain because you can't get the scores of basketball. It's not played on chain, right? And so to do it, you have to get data from the outside world, and this is where the Oracle problem, as many of the audience might have heard of, is how do you get that data on chain without compromising the security of the underlying blockchain? Right? It introduces a central point of failure, which almost renders the whole point of building a decentralized application moot if it's in a centralized kind of way. And so what Goracle aims to do is bring off-chain data in the same trustless manner. And we talk a lot about trustless. It's trustless in the sense that trust is distributed among quite a few different users. So, for example, on Ethereum or Bitcoin, you have all these different miners who are, competing. And in Algorand, it's everybody with a token can propose, certify, or vote on the next block. So really, as long as the supermajority is honest, it's cryptographically secure. So that's kind of the similar way we've designed Goracle is a consensus mechanism that ensures, hey, let's distribute the trust among as many nodes as possible so that we can at least mirror the same security properties as the underlying blockchain.
That makes sense. So what is new since the last time we spoke? So what has changed for Goracle, and how long until these services are live on mainnet?
That's a question we get a lot. Yeah, absolutely. We started off hyper-focused on price feeds. And since then, we've made our architecture in a way that it can service any type of data. And you look at a lot of oracles, the hyper-focus has always been on DeFi and price oracles, and that's what we're going to release live first. But essentially, the architecture, we want it to be robust. And also thinking about the security of an oracle, it has to be among the most secure. And almost 60, 70, 80% of hacks this year have been targeting price oracles and bridges, all slightly in a different way. Each attack has been a bit different, but generally it shows weak points. So security is an area we can't compromise, and whether it's making sure we're properly audited, making sure we're doing a lot of testing, making sure we're working closely with our stakeholders, whether it's the data providers, and making sure that they're happy and they're going to be providing data and that they're on board with our models, making sure the customers know how to access the data and they're going to get what they need. A lot of these, you can't really rush it. And we started building this last fall. And so I think even getting it out this sophisticated within a year, I think is huge for us. And so ideally our target was Q4, but we don't want to make any promises. If it's at least we want to get testnet out in Q4, show the visions, show what we're building, and get people building on it. And that's what our target is for the next 1 to 2 months is get that testnet out, get as many people building as possible, and get audited and see how things go.
Yeah, and definitely covering our bases and making sure that we're secure by running as many simulations as we can. whether those are simulations that are have to do with our tokenomics or simulations and how the network responds to requests.
Yeah, and I wanted to get your take on, you're the smart contract or one of the smart contract developers over at Goracle, and Abdul just illuminated us on some of the security risks that a lot of these, Oracle services across the blockchain ecosystem, suffer from. So I'm curious to get your take as a developer within Goracle. How is Goracle going the extra mile to make sure that the smart contracts that they're writing are not only secure but do the functions that they say they're going to do? And then could you illuminate us on the types of work that you're doing within the within Goracle?
Yeah, so I'm a blockchain developer. I mostly work on the smart contract side of things. I'm working closely with the node runner engineers to make sure that the way that they interact with our smart contracts makes sense and is efficient, and things go as smoothly as possible there. Basically, what we're doing from a security standpoint is we are taking a lot of inspiration from the Algorand consensus protocol. We're also doing whatever we can to make sure that we have many tests in place to test each individual component of our system and try to make sure that fills in the problem space of all of the functionality, so that we kind of leave no corner untouched by our testing system.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I want to touch on audits a little bit because Abdul brought it up. It's a very important piece of the puzzle for a lot of these applications. Is there a particular audit service that you guys are working with, and when could people expect to be able to read through a public audit report?
Sure, I can speak to that. We've spoken to almost anybody who does grant audits. I don't want to drop specific names because we're still in the negotiation phases with a lot of them. We've signed a contract with one or two. We'll probably get audited by a couple of firms, and the first audit report, it's tricky to say because there's so many different moving parts. We had an audit date for the end of this month. Maybe we'll push it back a bit next month. And so it's tricky. Like, do we do the audit before everybody has taken the time to play in testnet? Do we do it before we release the testnet? That's kind of the things we're figuring out now. And likely it'll be somewhere in the middle. Get testnet out, get people using it, and then get the code audited as well. But before you can do an audit, you have to freeze your code, and you have to be sure this is the code that's going to be going to mainnet. So that's kind of our key goal is get it out to testnet, work it. I'm optimistic. I always say Q4. So that's at least our mainnet goal is Q4. But again, we can't make any promises there.
Yeah, so the mainnet goal is a little bit more theoretical. So, but what about the testnet goal? So you said you're trying to get the testnet up and running. Do you have a date or maybe a week in mind for when the testnet will be up?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say a matter of weeks. But our development team will definitely be able to speak more to that. Internally, we've built example applications, and we've been testing it pretty much almost end to end internally. And so until we can do simulate, and the interesting thing is, since we've last spoke, JT, is we were talking to a small group of DeFi applications on testnet, and our price data is actually on testnet. And anybody who wants to use the top 50 cryptocurrencies can actually go right now and use any of those cryptocurrency price data on chain. And that's actually been out since the beginning of the year. That product specifically is going to always be a public good, right? And that's one of the things that's going to get people in the door, kind of a freemium model if you think of it. And I just want to maybe go back a step and clarify the different types of fees that we have. There's always going to be this top 50 or top 100 price data, which is literally what's the price of Bitcoin right now. And anybody who wants to use that data can actually go ahead and use it. And that's not actually going to change much. And that's already in testnet. It's been that way for several months. What we're talking about actually is custom. I want to call a custom endpoint, or I want to get the scores of a specific game. This is something not a lot of oracles are doing, being able to get any kind of data you want. And we think this is going to be the exciting thing that's going to unlock a lot more use cases than just what's available right now in DeFi and price oracles. And so, sorry. So since we started, we've been getting a lot more attention in the sense that people are reaching out to us. Hey, I was going to build something like this on Ethereum, or I was going to build something like this on another chain, but there wasn't an Oracle, or it didn't make sense. So I just shelved the idea. Or it's a large institution who's reaching out to us because they're building an internal proof of concept. And the more we have these types of people reaching out to us, the more we realize, a lot of the customers and a lot of people who will be using this Oracle are building in stealth mode, or they want advanced use cases out of their Oracles. And so we want to make sure we're launching with a product that meets those needs.
So a few questions based on all that, because that was certainly a good chunk of information. So where is Goracle? First question is, where is Goracle getting the price feed information from? Is that coming from like CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko's APIs? Where's that data coming from?
So that data is aggregated from institutional grade data providers right now. So the Kaikos, Amber Data, Brave New Coin. And I think it's really important to have visibility in where the data is coming from, because that in and of itself can actually make a big difference. And so there was this whole thing, most recently with the MNGO protocol hack, and and even I think there was a lot of threads that touched upon this, like Sam Bankman-Fried and how FTX uses their price oracles. When you get price data, a lot of times you don't want to just trust that price data. You want to do some sort of after kind of, if the price jumps 500% in 5 seconds, there's probably something wrong with that. And you want to, as a developer, you want to take into account certain aspects of it, right? And so getting data right from the source, and this is something that kind of has tripped up a lot of people, is if you're getting data from a source, from a DEX or something like that, one way you can manipulate it is, hey, I can actually boost the price of something so high artificially, and that messes up the price, which is the true price, but at the same time, it's not the true price because it is manipulated. And so by using these data aggregators, like Brave New Coin, for example, what they do is they actually pre-process data already. And they look at 30, 40, 50 to 60 exchanges. And you've seen with CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko, sometimes they display these insane prices, and we've seen that this year and last. When you use an aggregated institutional data provider like Kaiko, they don't allow these kinds of data to pass through. And so it's almost like an oracle of oracles, where you have these institutional grade data providers who already aggregated the data and weeded out bad data. And actually, we get a lot of alerts saying, hey, this data has been weeded out. And then we aggregate that data. So that's one of the, I think, things that's unique about Goracle is people know where the data is coming from. They know specifically. It's not these nodes that just kind of go out their own endpoints and get whatever they want. So that's kind of where a little bit of a difference there.
And to build on that a little bit, when it comes to us being able to respond to custom requests from users, it's important to note that they should be able to specify multiple sources on where they want the data to come from, and how they want to aggregate the data from those multiple sources. So let's say if you had custom API endpoints, like 3 different of them, you want to be able to grab the data from all 3 endpoints, and then let's say take the average of them or the median of those 3 data points.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I guess to build on all of this, my next question will have to be, what sort of data providers will Goracle be launching with or try to launch with? I'm sure that, behind the scenes, Goracle's trying to work on some partnerships so that way it launches with, some data feeds, right off the bat. So I'm curious if you could share any of those with us.
Yeah, so NFT data feeds, that's been something that's been requested by a couple of our customers. Price data, so not just what's in the current, but if you want to get like order book data, high lows, volume, things like that. Sports is a big one. I think we talked a lot about how this whole project started to get sports feed, and so sports feeds is definitely going to be a big one. Flight data, flight leaving, arrival times, and all of that for people to build insurance products. Traditional finance. Traditional finance has a lot of regulation around it, so it might come a bit later to deal with the regulation. But we have the data providers available. Weather, weather is a big one. I think there's a lot of use cases that could be built with weather. We'll see how they're used. And then blockchain. So if you want data on something that's happening on Ethereum, we can have that live. So that's our goal, is to get these out. Obviously, our primary focus is price feeds. Getting that mature. And then this kind of and custom GET request response, like Samantha was just saying, being able to specify your own URL and
Right.
being able to specify how you want that data aggregated. And that's kind of a whole chunk of that in and of itself, I think puts us ahead of a lot of the oracles out there.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ethereum, so of course I have to bring it up. How does Goracle compare to services like Chainlink?
Yeah, so Goracle's, it's the goal is to be as decentralized as possible. The goal is to allow flexibility in how you want your data. So whether you're trying to get data off chain to on chain or vice versa, whether you want it to be, whether you want to specify your own aggregation mechanisms that we discussed, we're trying to be cheap, right? You're trying to be affordable, obviously, where people can still get data, but obviously not so expensive where it's unusable. And so I think our aim, and I don't want to focus too much on what other oracles are doing, but I think what Goracle is doing is to enable the future of real world applications. We want to make it almost seamless when you're building a Web3 app to build as close as possible to Web2, but still have the properties of Web3 in terms of decentralization. And so that's our focus, try to mimic the Web2. And that's one reason why we have so much conversations with data providers and with customers and even with node runners, is to understand the motivations of all these unique parties, because a data provider's motivations are going to be different from a customer's, from a node runner's. And so I think what other oracles do is they build something and they make everybody conform to it. What we're focused on is building something by taking into account what people are actually doing and how people want to build, and traditional business models of data providers meeting the unique use cases of decentralized applications.
Right, and I'm curious, are there going to be community node runners for Goracle? And if so, how will they be rewarded for operating these nodes?
Yeah, I think there's going to be the node runners. The goal is for it to be permissionless, right? We want anybody who wants to join to be able to stake a certain amount of tokens and to be able to participate. And so they're all going to come from the community. We've our forum has about 5,000 node runners who've signed up for the waitlist.
Wow.
It's a lot of people are asking, like, when can I run nodes, and we're trying to do it in phases. So right now we've just started with a smaller group, people that are very close to us that we know and we can trust. And obviously it's starting off a little permission, but 20 to 30 node runners who can do the alpha testing outside of us. So we've tested it internally. We're going to continue to test it internally for a few more weeks, and then have these alpha group running. And once this alpha group runs it and we see no problems, we'll invite probably another 100 or a couple hundred to run the nodes. And it's going to be in phases like that. And the goal is eventually to be able to open it up for people who want to join. How that timeline looks, we're not sure of the eventual decentralization. I think a lot of blockchains start off slightly centralized and then open it up as trusted participants join, and as also the technology matures. One thing about Algorand is that we're trying to keep up is they're always releasing new features that allow us to build a better product. Now, we waited on the VRF verify, we got it. Now they promised block storage, and that's going to actually revolutionize how we build applications. So now we're waiting on block storage. So I think as Algorand releases new features, we'll also enhance the permissionlessness of Goracle. I'm not sure if Samantha has anything to add to that.
Yeah, you were also talking a little bit on what do people get for running a node. So running a node, you'll be staking a token called Gora, and essentially users who are making requests to the network will be paying out Gora, and you'll be splitting that fee up with other node runners. Also, since we also do voting on chain, that means your node runner is going to have to make a few transactions when it's responding to these requests. So we're hoping to also charge a small Algorand fee in addition to the Gora fee to then reimburse the node runners as much as we can to cover the network running fees. And once again, taking a lot of inspiration from Algorand when it comes to the node runner and trying to make it have as light of of a footprint as possible, so you don't need some sort of really big or expensive computer to run a node. You should be able to do it with minimal specs.
Right, right, and that's the only way it's really going to be truly decentralized in the long run. Because if it's only, if it's only the a few that can afford expensive equipment, it then is prone to centralization. But we segued into a important conversation, which is basically the Gora token and the utility behind the token. So we illuminated a little bit of that right here with the rewards for node runners and the staking and what have you. But is there any other utility, or do we want to expand on that utility at all for the Gora token?
Yeah, so I could touch on the main use cases. So
Yep.
one use case is paying for the data feeds, right? Getting if I want to get data feeds, you can either pay per call or a monthly subscription type. Another use case is staking and getting your rewards in Gora. So being a kind of a proof of stake, you have to put down a certain amount, and based on that amount, each token is eligible to be selected in a sortition process to be in part of a committee, and that committee gets to be vote and proposing on the next block. So that cryptographic sortition process directly depends on the token itself. In the future, we do plan to have delegated staking, where if I have a certain amount of Gora, but I don't want to actually run nodes, I can delegate this to another node runner or a staking pool. That's something that's kind of not necessarily for phase one, but in a future phase. And then there's also discussions around governance and how we can use that token for governance. The protocol, we're making a lot of decisions about the protocol and how it's going to work in the beginning, but we don't want what we decide to be final, right? It's going to be up to the community eventually to decide the direction that it's going to head in. And so the direction that it heads in is going to be how do we vote on it and things like that. So we're seeing how to best incorporate that token as a governance tool.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I suppose one of my last questions have to be, how does somebody become a data provider? So say I had access to some weather information or something like that, and I wanted to provide this data through an Oracle service, through Goracle. How would I go about doing that? And then how does the system go about making sure that it's trustworthy data?
Yeah, another great question. So this is something we've kind of changed our tune about at the beginning. Is at first we're like, anybody can provide data, right? Anybody can come in, subscribe to a CoinGecko or a weather endpoint and start providing data. But the moment we started talking to institutional grade data providers, and the moment we started talking to customers, we realized that people don't want data from just anywhere. We also realized that institutional grade data providers are happy to provide data for an Oracle, but they see a conflict of interest when if they're spending all this effort to make clear. And we talked about it earlier, how they aggregate all these data sources and read out kind of the bad data. Now you're putting them in a pool with maybe somebody who's getting straight from CoinMarketCap, and then what it makes it difficult so that I'm reporting the correct price. This person is reporting a very incorrect price. In a decentralized protocol, you're taking the average of the mean. A quadrillion price Bitcoin will screw things over. And, if you have 10 coin people have CoinMarketCap data, then that looks like it's the correct price. So eventually what we settled on is kind of a little bit of in between, where, we start off with these institutional grade data providers. And now, if you want to become a data provider, you have to be voted in by the community, right? And it's in customers' best interest to have as many aggregated data sources as possible, but it's also in their best interest to make sure that the data providers who are joining the system are actually high quality data providers. And right now our discussions internally are having a model similar to Algorand's governance, where every quarter you kind of lock up some tokens so that you can vote and propose. And so maybe it's a quarterly thing where every quarter we decide, or the customers and the community decide if they want to allow a new data provider, or if they want to kick out a previously allowed data provider because that data provider has bad data. And so there's so many different moving parts to that, and that's kind of where we are right now. But it's hard to say that's where we'll be a year from now.
Right, right. I mean, these things are always evolving, and I think if they stop evolving, it's probably a bad sign, to be honest. But
Yeah,
you mentioned something about bad data and the ability to maybe vote that data feed out of of the Oracle service. Are there any other punishments or maybe slashing for bad or malicious data that's being fed through these feeds?
yeah. Right now, I think slashing is not necessarily implemented. So we look at the situation where you have these data providers and they're generally high quality institutional grade data providers, and then you look at the node runners and how they aggregate the data. And this is something that we've covered quite extensively in the white paper. But the fact that the way the data is aggregated depends on kind of good data, and uh, it makes it kind of tricky to slash or to have those types of penalties. And really, I think right now the only penalties are necessarily not being able to monetize or from a large pool of customers. And it goes back to making sure that customers and developers are building applications that can rely and trust. These are good data providers, and the data that we get, we're going to also do some processing on it. And that's it's a tricky thing. People say, "Hey, you have to slash, you have to slash," but when you actually look at it, and if you build it in a way where there's a lot of security properties that take into account in the first place, then slashing concept becomes just something that is added on and not necessarily going to prevent bad actors, if you know what I mean. So ultimately, you can add slashing and somebody will still find a way around it. And these hackers are quite sophisticated, and so slashing in and of itself as a penalty um, isn't necessarily the best thing, even though it's something that people look at first. And that's something we started with was, hey, we're going to slash. But as we built the application, we realized there's actually ways to make it robust so that slashing is not necessarily uh, the greatest penalty, and really all it's going to do is add complexity and not necessarily prevent attacks. And that goes back to how similar oracles solve this is they do things optimistically. Um, and that's kind of what slashing is. It's like you're saying, okay, this is optimistic in the sense that if something happens, we'll we'll dispute it, or if something happens, we'll slash it. And we're not an optimistic oracle where when the data is placed on the final destination, it's final. Right? And so for the data we place in the final destination to be final, there has to be a lot of security and a lot of pre-processing that goes into that.
Yeah, on top of that, having the user being able to specify the sources that they want to get the data from as well. Like we may have multiple institutional grade data providers that provide the Bitcoin price, for example.
Right.
And if they've worked up a good reputation of being reliable, then we would expect our users to specify to use that source more often, right? Or if we know that there's been some sort of security breach at another institutional grade data provider, we expect users to maybe not choose that one when implementing it into their application.
Right, and that makes sense. So this has been honestly a fantastic discussion, and I do want to give both of you the chance or the opportunity to really have the floor and discuss anything that we might not have brought up. Because I know I had a whole bunch of questions, but there's a huge chance I might have missed something that you guys want to talk about. So I want to leave the floor to you for this one.
At least for me, what I'm most excited about this project, like we've iterated on, we're definitely concentrating on price feeds and institutional grade data at first, getting that right out the door first thing. But what I'm most excited about is being able to in the future uh, have users be able to specify custom endpoints. And I think with this, we could vastly expand on the complexity, capacity, and capability of smart contracts on Algorand and bring about general purpose and expensive computation on chain. Um, as especially as many programmers know who have worked on Algorand or any blockchain in general, they know that smart contracts could very limit you on the amount of complexity that you could bring to your app. And this essentially provides a portal to be able to do expensive or non blockchain type things with your application.
Fantastic, and I don't know if you have anything to add to that as well, Abdul, but the floor is yours if you do.
Yeah, I'm definitely very excited about our future roadmap. We're not just building something for right now. Where focus is a year, 2 years, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And we're always looking at how blockchain is going to evolve and how people are trying to use it. And like I said earlier, we're getting a lot of feedback from people who plan to do certain things that they were limited by what's existing, and we're getting direct feedback from them. The Oracle's market cap is only about 0.3, 0.4% of the entire market cap. And that's such a small number when you consider the fact that it's going to be crucial if we want to build real world, the next generation of applications. Um, Despite the bear market and the volume right now, we're still seeing record numbers of users onboarding into the crypto world. We're still seeing record numbers of wallets. I think Q1 and Q2 this year have probably been the most number of users onboarded, and people are still paying attention. You look at emerging economies where the currency has really tanked due to poor government monetary policies. They're adopting crypto. Emerging markets are adopting crypto at a much higher rate, and now they're not just using crypto for payments. That's the first thing they're using it for, but now they're starting to use it in other day-to-day activities. And so, really, the Oracle market cap should be 5%, if not 10%. That's a conservative estimate in my view. So we're definitely looking at a long-term approach. Uh, Despite a lot of some of the customers on DeFi right now wanted, hey, go live, get us these price feeds on mainnet.
Right.
We do have to balance making sure that we build a sophisticated product that's going to evolve into the future, and of course meet the needs of the current providers. And so, once we get this out, we're going to be excited to do some kind of hackathons with a lot of the new feeds like sports, weather, flight, NFT, or VRF, or any of these types of data feeds. And in the future, as Samantha mentioned, off-chain computation, being able to run data off-chain so you don't even need a Web2 backend. And so I think a lot of the cool use cases of Goracle we're going to start to see immediately when we start doing these kind of, maybe even a hackathon testnet. People can start building cool things using these feeds, and again, custom APIs as well. So definitely taking the very, very long term. A lot of things going to be coming out in the next few weeks. It's going to be a very exciting time to be following our work here.
Fantastic. And you said something that it just rings true in most of crypto, that it just seems like no one really has too much patience. They're like, get these price feeds out there. I want this here, when mainnet. And I get it, because like a week in crypto is like a year in regular life. So I mean, it is that way. But I want to ask, where can my viewers and the Algorand audience and everyone else go to learn more about the project and make sure that they can get involved? I don't know if you guys have a Discord or a Telegram. You mentioned potential future hackathons, so I just want to be sure that everybody listening knows where they can go to keep in touch and be aware of all the things that Goracle has coming out.
For sure, I think Twitter is where we try to release the most amount of news, right? So anything we post on Twitter, any sort of developments, goes on Twitter first. Our Discord and our Telegram also get that information. So a lot of people don't use Twitter; they use Discord. All that information is also posted to Discord at the same time. A lot of people don't use either; they use Telegram. So I think those Discord and Telegram are great resources. You can also sign up for our newsletter. So whether you just use email, you can still get anything that we're doing as a newsletter to your inbox. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to follow us. Those are the primary ones, and I'm sure you'll link it in the video, JT. So I'll send you those links over.
Absolutely, and he's absolutely right. So once this comes out, check the video description. Those links will all be there. And I suppose the last question that is just going to be a lighthearted one. Are you still building that, what is it? Was it a sports betting application that you originally tried to build and then realized you needed an Oracle service to build it? Are you still planning on building that application?
Goracle has taken up so much of our time here.
That's such on the back burner now.
It's very, very far on the back burner. There's actually a lot of teams who are building things like that, and so rather than kind of compete with those types, I want to empower them with the data they need. It's great to have a good understanding of what they need, and having been a potential customer of ours, and so I think now Goracle has to be our main focus with what's going on. and then supporting every project and not even kind of having a conflict of interest with any projects we're trying to build anything, I think is also important. So to answer your question more simply, our focus is fully on Goracle.
Beautiful. Makes sense to me. Well, I really appreciate the time both yourself and Samantha took out of your day to join me on the show and illuminate my audience on some of the amazing things Goracle has going on for it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, JT. Are you gonna be in Decipher?
I am going to be in Decipher. How about you?
Yeah, I'll be heading there. It's a little out of the way in Dubai for people who live in North America, but I'm currently living in Finland, so it's a nice short flight.
Oh, there you go. It's a 14-hour flight for me. So I wish it was a nice short flight, but you got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Last year was in Miami, so I think this year they wanted more of an international audience. So I'll see you there.
Absolutely. Tune in. We're going to try to have a show, over at the next block. I'm unaware if you're aware of our other show, and that's actually a great segue for me to remind everybody watching to go subscribe to the next block and subscribe to this channel if you aren't already. But me and my co-host of the next block are going to be setting up a table there and going to be doing random interviews and whatnot. So feel free to join us on one of those interviews.
I can't wait. And like you said, those days are more of weeks. I think there's going to be a lot of updates by the time we reconnect in Decipher. So look forward to telling you about those.
Samantha and Abdul, this has been fantastic, and I really appreciate it. All right, everybody, that was my conversation with Abdul Osman and Samantha Palmer of Goracle. If you enjoyed the conversation, smash that thumbs up button, consider subscribing to the channel, and hit me up down in the comments below with your favorite part of the episode. And also, don't forget to check the video description for links to learn more about Goracle, as well as a link to get $25 towards your next investment in real estate through Lofty AI. I appreciate everyone that stayed to the end of this video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.